Good morning, everybody. It's Wednesday, October 23rd, and this is the AgYield War Room. I'm Dan Dempsey, and I'll be moderating today's session. As always, if you've got any questions or comments, please feel free to drop us a line in the chat area, and we'll be sure to get to it during the show. Quickly here, overnight markets had December corn down 3/4 at 415 3/4. November soybeans were down 4 1/4 at 987 1/2, and December Chicago wheat was down 7 at 569. This morning, we had a number of export sales announcements out from the USDA. 130,000 metric tons of soybeans to China for 24. 100,000 metric tons of corn to unknown destinations also for 24. And 259,000 metric tons of soybeans to unknown for 24. We are through 16 of 23 settlements for the harvest price discovery price period for crop insurance. Corn is currently at 416 3/4, and soybeans are at 1011. Good morning, guys. Hope everybody's doing well. We've got a very special guest with us here this morning. We got Matt Norman, who's a owner of Cedar Family Farms in Washington, Iowa, which is in sort of the eastern part of Iowa. And was very excited to have you here this morning, Matt. And hopefully, you can share with us just a little bit about where you're at harvest-wise. What you've experienced, and then kind of where that fell in line with what your hopes had been. So welcome to the show.
Thanks, Dan. I would say we're probably 75-80% done on corn. Should wrap up next week. Got done with beans a few weeks ago. What I would say for ourselves and others kind of in East Central, Southeast Iowa, the first week or 10 days of beans were phenomenal, well, way above APH. And then kind of the second half of bean harvest fell off. Not that they were bulge or anything, it's just they were more of average type yields. And I would say our average moisture that we combined the second half of our beans was, probably average somewhere between 8.5% and 9%. So we gave up a lot of yield just being under 13% that far. So beans ended up doing better than APH, but not as much as we would have thought the first week of harvest. On the corn side, corn yields all over East Central and Southeast Iowa have been record breaking, basically. Even as we've gotten into the last half of harvest, just like the beans, the corn's coming out ridiculously dry. We've done some fields that have been, 13, 14% moisture. It's been 80 degrees since September 1, and we've had very few days where you're even close to a normal temperature. So corn has been really, really good, and being slightly better than average, but not nearly as above an APH level as what corn's been.
And did you guys, that system that kind of rolled through upper part of the Midwest yesterday afternoon? By some accounts, it was nothing more than wetting the sidewalks. Did you guys get anything at all, or?
Yeah, we got like 3 tenths of rain, and we stopped for like 10 minutes. It is very dry across all of Iowa. It's amazing that 12 months ago the whole state was in some level of D0 to D3 on the drought map. This summer, virtually the whole state comes off, and here we are again with a lot of the state back on the drought map, and just it hasn't rained anywhere in Iowa for, I don't know, August probably.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. Especially the timing of this drought is really interesting.
It's been good for harvest, but it's not going to be good for fall fertilizer applications.
I was just going to ask you, we've gotten quite a few questions, Matt. Talk us through that piece. What's going to be necessary to recharge for you guys to be able to get that stuff done?
Well, I think a few inches would probably be enough to do some fall ammonia. But, as it sits today, we've got some light chances over the next 2 weeks. But, it's so dry that if it rains 3 or 4 tenths and it's 70 degrees out again, it's going to be gone by the time the soil's cold enough to do ammonia. Recharging subsoil is going to probably take a fair amount of snow and rainfall this winter, but I think the first thing is just having enough moisture to be able to seal up dry soil with ammonia.
Fellas, any questions here for Matt this morning?
So Matt, if you don't get some of that work done, like what's plan B? You just got to go hard in the spring, or do you switch to liquid, or what's kind of your game plan?
We
Don't want to think about it right
use,
now.
well, I mean, we have a lot of hog manure first off. So I mean, that's got to come out of the pits and get applied, which doesn't, if it's drier, it's not such a big deal. So for ourselves, like we'll just switch to some spring ammonia. But I know from talking to our retailer, I mean, they're kind of concerned because, you know, those guys have got to do X amount of acres between fall and spring. Well, fall's your big application window, and spring, you know, sometimes might be 2 or 3 days, sometimes it might be 3 weeks, but you don't know. So I think there's a lot more concern from the retail side of how do you accomplish that, knowing that you really need to do a lot of it in the fall.
Yeah. Right. So what if it doesn't get done, let's say, is there a trade-off in the spring then for growers, or do they apply less? Is there an acre mix up? Is there, something's got to give, right, on that?
Yeah, I mean, you've got other ways to put it down. I mean, you can obviously run some dry urea, or, you know, add liquid in with your pre-emergent spray application. So I mean, I think people probably try to figure out a way. It's just, you know, ammonia is still typically the absolute cheapest source of nitrogen, and you're already looking at a significantly compressed margin environment for 25. So I mean, anything you do to deviate from the original plan just eats into that, you know, whether it's a slight negative or slight positive, not a very good margin outlook situation.
Right. So he's got to kind of pay up, and
yeah, I mean, liquid tends to cost more, and if products have to rotate, well, I mean, those guys know what's going on. Like, there's only so much liquid produced and so much urea, and you know, if you're going to shift and eat into some more of those tons, they get more expensive.
Very good. Any other questions for Matt this morning? This has been good information for sure. Dustin?
I just think, as we go into 2025, I know, Matt, you and I have talked a lot about margin compression. I'm just thinking, for you, just kind of for the group, like what would be the thing that changes your rotation, if anything at all, price wise, or anything to do with these inputs coming down? Is there anything that you think that would start to change up your rotation?
You'd have to see a very, very significant shift to one commodity or the other. I mean, we've been in a half corn, half bean rotation for probably, I don't know, at least 10 years. And for ourselves, I mean, we used to raise a lot of corn on corn, and the risk associated with that is just pretty high versus the reward, especially when you're in slim margins. And it helps that we can raise really good bean yields. So for ourselves personally, it'd have to be a pretty say the skew shifts to corn. Corn would have to be extraordinarily profitable, and beans would have to be an amazing amount of negative margin to make a switch. And part of that's just like focusing on the long term versus one single set of a year.
It'd be easier the other way for beans to buy acres from you with a price move, maybe especially since if you don't get fall and hydrous put down. Is that fair to say? Or
I would just say it's in general going to be pretty hard for us to switch acres at all, really.
Yeah, it makes sense. I think the reason why I'm asking, I already kind of probably knew your answer a bit, but when I think about that D25 contract for corn, I think that maybe looks to be one of the more underpriced things on the market right now. So just hearing basically all that's led up to this conversation in what it would take to get more corn acres acres out of rotation on a year where we're already seeing margin compression just seems not that likely to me. And so when we're below cost of production from university data, I just look at that D25 corn contract and thinking, man, it looks cheap right now. So that's I guess it kind of leads into that a bit.
Yeah,
So.
I mean, with that point, Dustin, it's like 430, 440 corn. I don't think that's going to pull a lot of acres of corn on corn by any
Right.
amount whatsoever. That's not even. It's got to be a lot higher.
Yeah.
For people who are willing to make a shift, I think it has to be a lot higher.
Right. And it's if fall application's not like just super smooth and easy.
That makes it that much harder.
Right. Exactly. So
that's really good stuff. Go ahead, Dustin.
No, I was just thinking, anything else you think that growers should just be thinking about, from your perspective that we haven't been talking about lately? I mean, and we talked a little bit about like PLC coverage and things like that. That's kind of shifted your thought on risk a little bit.
Well, yeah, I mean, you start to look out at where PLC in particular is going to be at for corn for 25 at a $4.26 base price. You think back 3 or 4 years ago, is at 370. Well, not that 426 gives you more than likely coverage, of course, sort of a free put from the government that makes you profitable, but that's a lot different than having that floor at 370. And, I still think there's ways to manage what you're doing around that number, especially once we know what crop insurance is this spring. So, and beans are 970 or something. So I think, we're going to take a hard look at what programs are for next year just to manage our trading around some of those government programs that are out there to stabilize a price point. I mean, that's one big thing that we've talked about doing, obviously, Dustin.
Yeah. And I think that's just something that we haven't really talked on the show at all yet about, is like where PLC has come in at, like the PLC floor. And that might shift just how people think about risk as well. Is, we've seen this phenomenon. We saw it last year. We saw it in 2016, 2014. Whenever you get down in 2020, especially, you get down to levels where it's either insurance or farm bill is starting to provide some sort of a floor, whether it's conscious or subconscious, we generally see selling kind of dry up a bit. And so just something for everyone to kind of think about. These PLC floors are really, really strong for next year. And it's something to kind of keep in mind as we go into some of these lower price points in the back end of the market in the last couple of days. It's just been kind of thinking about, and Matt actually brought it up to me, so that's why I wanted to bring it up in this. So,
and as always, for folks that want to learn more or visit about their specific situation, just give us a shout, reach out, info@agyield.com. We've been more than happy to go through that with you. Matt, I know you're busy here this morning. We appreciate you taking the time to come on and visit. This was a good conversation, and as always, we appreciate it. We'll have to have you back on the show here again.
Thanks, Dan.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Matt.
Thanks, Matt. Thank you.
All right. Once again, that's Matt Norman from Cedar Family Farms in Washington, Iowa. That was good stuff, guys. I know we're going to be coming into the open. That was a good start there. Dustin, I wanted to talk on something real quickly. There was some news out yesterday pertaining to the Farm Assistance and Revenue Mitigation Act that is being proposed to Congress, potentially trying to get this through during the lame duck session here. Maybe just a few thoughts and comments in terms of how that could potentially impact the markets as we go forward if they were to pass that bill.
Yeah. So thanks, Dan. I think the big thing for us, we're still learning about it, right? We've only heard just the details from some of the, just industry partners, online. Actually, one of the guys that had put something out really good yesterday on AgWeb was Paul Neffer. And, just talking about what the payments could be as it stands right now, the current proposal, based on the losses that are projected for this year, some of the average payments that he had calculated will be around $103 an acre for corn and $48 an acre for soybeans and $82 for wheat. Very substantial if that's the case, right? That would mitigate a lot of the losses that have been projected for the 24 marketing season. It looks like there's probably going to be some changes to it still before it actually goes and gets passed. But just a little bit of a kind of a bright thing that popped up here the last couple of days unexpectedly to maybe mitigate some of the losses that we've talked a lot about on the show is that we had break evens above $5 for the average grower, based on the university data coming into the year. And of course, we're sitting here with cash prices below $4 in a lot of locations. That would go a long way to kind of bring people closer to whole on average going into the next season. What are the market implications? I don't know. There's a major market implication other than, you might not see as much reduction of like just cost cutting the following year. I really couldn't, pinpoint what that would be for markets. But
well, it probably matters when they receive the payment too. For cash flow needs, right? For rent renewals, and if we've seen this in the past, right? When growers have enough cash, right, they tend not to sell nearly as much old crop because they can weather the low price storm, and and then years like we've seen recently, it all comes to a head. We've kind of talked about how farmers would be a little more strapped for cash this time around, but let's say these payments do go out quickly, that might suggest that some of this old crop corn, stays on farm a little longer than it should, or maybe that pays off, right? Maybe that gamble kind of pays off too. So that might be one thing. Just when do these payments come? Is it sooner or later? So
well, that's a great point, Jason. And your brother mentioned it yesterday. That the prospects out forward for corn. There's a path, or there's a potential story to seeing maybe a little bit of a better pricing environment. So if you got enough of a buffer to carry you, to your point, Jace, like you put as much away as you can, and see if that materializes a little bit.
Yeah, right. I think Justin always likes to say, right, if you got to get the farmer bullish, or you got to get the farmer bearish for them to not sell or to sell, right? And you probably got a lot of farmers kind of bearish here recently, but if the market does start turning around, we've seen some of these positive things. If you can get the farmer bullish, and then you go pay them, $100 an acre to hold on to their grain, that might end up turning into a story. So
very good. Ben, looks like you got something brewing there.
I'm going to be counterpoint to that. I just had this discussion with a bank this morning, and I think ultimately price is going to find, buyers and sellers are going to find each other. And I would look at that payment on an individual basis, and then say, okay, this may be the thing that really was a great lifeline for you. And how do you make sure, especially if you're someone who's hanging on, how do you use a portion of that maybe to protect yourself? And we could have a bump, we could have a rally, and I definitely believe in the Q1, Q2 story, but I think it's a really good opportunity to sit down and look at whole farm profitability with that payment if it materializes, right?
Oh, sure.
Oh, that's definitely great advice.
Yeah. And I just, when money falls from the sky, right, get your basket out and keep as much of it as you can. So
right. The thing is, will the majority of growers do that, right? That's the big question of how that will affect them.
Yeah.
That's what they should do. I would completely agree.
And we, Dustin and I had this conversation last week, and we went back, and now every year is different. Every year people have a different hand that they're holding. And we went back and looked at 2018 when they handed payments out and did an overlay of March 19. And you couldn't really, I think it was what you inferred, Jason, is we kind of went sideways for a long time, and then into the end of February and early March, we tanked the market. Like, people had to eventually generate cash, right? So how they handle it, I suppose at 410 corn or 415 corn, below break evens, you could probably make a strong case that the general grower is going to say, I'm going to wait this out now, especially at least through December, right? Once they're done with harvest. And so,
Well, they typically have more time in corn before they're competing with South America too.
yep.
Right. So if they do get a payment, we get into the spring. Let's say the guys don't get anhydrous put down this fall. They feel like they're way behind. We're in a drought, right? There's a lot of narratives that you can convince yourself you shouldn't be selling your corn, right?
Yeah.
Those things can add up, and that can be a short-term supply problem in corn, without a lot of competition to feed that hose. So
Yeah, and I think that story's brewing. My concern is that we're going to front load a bunch of this demand, and if things do go haywire with the elections and potential problems there, that we may be looking at each other in February and March, go, well, if this wouldn't have happened, we'd be doing this. And
13 days.
Yeah, good corn demand.
God, right.
Early. You look at some of the hot spots in the world that really need some rain. Russia, Ukraine. We need follow-on rains in South America, and we need rain across the U.S. We got a lot of winter wheat's been planted over the last 2-3 weeks, and it really needs a rain to get it going. So,
yep, very good stuff. We've come into the open here, Rylan. Nice to see fat cattle is hanging in there. Stories out yesterday afternoon, and a little bit more confirmation this morning, potentially slivered onions in the quarter pounders at McDonald's, sparking an E. coli issue here. Maybe a few of your thoughts as you've dug into it overnight. And then last thing, huge open interest in hogs continues to build. So,
yeah, absolutely. Kind of a wild ride after the close yesterday. It looks like it actually was from the beef. That was at least the most recent update, but it's still a developing story right now with this E. coli outbreak. Right now, it's really taken off the menu in 2 states, maybe up to 4 at this point. So, I mean, like, these guys, McDonald's knows how to handle these kind of situations. So I think that's why potentially the market's shrugging it off right now. But overall, I mean, you got a really big, long commitment in the market. Is this enough to really shake them out? And obviously we're not seeing that reaction, but I think everybody came in to say, let's wait till we know more before we panic. Cooler heads prevail. And that was kind of what we were advising yesterday on the comments. Like, let's see what happens here. We don't need to panic. That's usually the wrong response. So we'll keep everybody updated right now. I mean, like, you got 1 death in 49 cases, and you've got 4 different states that have been affected. But right now, the market doesn't seem to really care that much. The stock is down, obviously, pretty hard, but the futures are holding in there. So, I think everybody's just trying to digest it all, see what the next step's going to be, what the protocol is, but it looks like they've identified the issue and they're kind of taking care of it. So hopefully this doesn't eat in demand, but that could be a little bit of a, kind of long road. So I'm not going to say we're over this or we're out of the woods, because this problem could be bigger than one would expect, or as more information comes out. So just something to keep in the back of the mind. But yeah, I mean, we're seeing managed money really dogpile into the hogs, into the cattle. I mean, they want to be long commodities for probably a variety of reasons right now. I think just overall the kind of inflation trade is, I've heard just a couple talking heads and outside media sources just really kind of hammering that home. So I do think it's a popular idea right now, but overall it just seems like you've still got relatively tight cattle supplies. The way the hog market's trading, you got really good kind of outside demand, and it seems like there just isn't as many hogs around as the market would expect. So that's why we're seeing, kind of a lack of a break in pork prices and cash. So overall, I mean, the news is still really good, all things considered. So maybe that's why the market's just a little, especially on the cattle side, a little slow to react to this kind of news.
Very good. Appreciate the update. We'll continue to monitor that scenario, that situation. We'll have updates in our commentaries and certainly in the war room. One thing to note, tomorrow morning we'll have weekly export sales. They'll be out at 7:30 Central. We'll take a look at those, discuss those in the war room tomorrow. We appreciate everybody that tunes in on a daily basis. If you wouldn't mind, throw us a like or subscribe. It doesn't cost you anything to do so, and it'll keep you up to speed on everything AgYield. So once again, thanks to everybody that supports the show and tunes in every day. Every day that the markets are open, we're streaming live on X, Facebook Live, and YouTube Live, 8:15 Central Time. We'll give one quick rundown of the markets here. We got December corn down a penny, 4.15.5. November soybeans unchanged right now at 9.91 3/4. And December Chicago wheat's down 4 1/4 at 5.71 3/4. Thanks for all the comments here this morning, guys. It was a good conversation. Once again, thanks to Matt Norman, Cedar Family Farms, for participating here this morning. He had good information for us as well. So everybody have a great day, and we look forward to talking again tomorrow.
The War Room is proudly presented by AgYield. For over 50 years, the AgYield team has provided grain marketing and risk management solutions for growers across the country. Our veteran consultants harness cutting-edge technologies to pinpoint risk, optimize market performance, and protect your farm's profitability. Discover a new approach to farm revenue management at agyield.com.
Hey guys, Jack here. Be sure to support the show by hitting the like button, leaving us a comment, and subscribing to the channel for all the latest updates. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.